Hi, and welcome to Coffee with Claire. As you loyal fans know, we bring to you business leaders and entrepreneurs who like to give back and have fun. My guest today is Fred Zuker. Fred is the author of a series of memoirs that tell rich and inspiring stories. A career educator and academic, Dr. Zuker has worked in a number of roles in higher education, as well as being an accomplished writer of nonfiction. Please join me in welcoming Fred Zuker. Dun, 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 dun.
Ta-da.
Oh my gosh, I am so excited to have you here, Fred. I am amazed at all of the things that you have accomplished in your short time here on this planet Earth. And we were talking a little bit before you actually got on the air today about that background, and I'd love for you to share a little bit of it with our viewers.
Sure. Claire, it's a pleasure to be with you. It's really something I've been looking forward to. My career in higher education spans 46 years
Wow.
from coast to coast. Started at Duke University, where I was a football player. I went to Duke University on a football scholarship, served 3 years in the service, came back to work at Duke.
Wow.
Then from there went to Tulane University, from there to Pomona College in Claremont, California. Then the University of California, Riverside, University of Dallas, 8 institutions in total. And the last one was Parker University right here in Dallas. So my career has been in higher education. I've done a lot of writing over the years. I wrote a book on college admission back in the early 70s, and that was published in 5 editions through 1991
Oh, wow.
on how to get into college and the transition of students going from high school to college and to the predictable crises that students go through as they make that transition. So I've had a great career in higher education. I've met some wonderful people. I've had a chance to teach and also to be an administrator, to be a college president. And that's always an exciting job.
I bet.
Any presidency can be exciting, including higher education. But I'm now retired, and I have
Congratulations.
begun, and thank you very much. Retirement is always a work in progress, I've found. Just
Okay.
sort of finding what you need to do. But one of the things I wanted to do in retirement was to write. Things I had not had a chance to do during my career, which is mostly associated with my work. But I had a very interesting experience in the Army, especially in basic training. So I wanted to write about that, and my 3 years in the military were very interesting to me. I did not go to Vietnam. It was during the Vietnam era, but I went to Korea for a year and a half. During the Vietnam era.
Interesting.
And that was very interesting.
I bet.
But my dad and I had written a book together in 1987-88 about his World War II experience. And I really was interested in that. I was a history major as an undergraduate and was very interested in World War II history and world history and history of warfare in general. My dad was a bomber pilot, a B-17, B-24 pilot in Europe, in the European Theater of Operations. Flew 25 combat missions and survived.
Good for him. Yay.
Which not many of them did,
Right.
flying out of that theater of operations.
Especially that many.
That many, and that was a requirement. You had to fly that many before you could rotate back to the States.
Oh my gosh. You have to put your life on the line this many times, then you get to go home.
You may remember the movie Memphis Belle? That was a movie made about one of the first crews who did that, completed
wow.
that mission requirement, and the drama of what that meant, considering the chances of not making it back in those days. So I said, Dad, you have a great story to tell. I mean, let's do it together. He said, no. He had surgery, and he was not a good recovery patient, as many of us are not.
Okay.
And I told him, I said, this would be a good therapy for you to tell your story. I mean, what you can do is write it down, send it to me, and I'll put it in my word processor. He was not very computer literate back in 1987. He said, okay. And so he started writing it in third person. He did this, he did that. I said, Dad, no, this is a memoir. This is your story. You have to tell it how you felt it, how you lived it.
Right.
So we started this back and forth process. And it worked out very well. We were able to do this, and I think he was happy with what I was adding to the mix. I'm the oldest of 4 boys.
Okay.
My dad is a German descendant, a very staid, sort of severe kind of guy. The parenting was for my mother.
Okay.
The breadwinning was for my dad. And those did not intermingle very much. So a pat on the shoulder was about as much affection I ever got from my dad. He sometimes would say, "Good game last night," about football, but that was about it.
And you were doing cartwheels all night
And I
long.
he actually looked at me. He spoke directly to
Oh my
me.
gosh.
Isn't that great? But working with him as a writer, as an editor for him, for one thing, it took him back to World War II. Growing up, he'd been getting these Christmas cards from these guys that called him Skipper. And I thought, my dad is not Skipper. I mean, that didn't fit with his persona. But it turns out he was the first pilot. He was the senior person on that B-24, B-17 bomber. And those 10 men, those 9 other men, looked to him to get them off the runway to the mission and home again safely.
Wow.
He was their skipper. He was the guy that, he was in charge of that entire crew, 4-engine bomber at age 21.
That's
These
a lot of
young men,
responsibility.
this greatest generation we've talked about so much.
Yeah.
And one reason I wanted to get back to this project was this was the 75th anniversary of D-Day when I started the project of expanding the book we did in 1987. And it just made me think what those guys did.
Yeah.
Without any background, these guys were, he came from a small farming community in central Michigan. He had no experience, but he decided at age 9 he was going to be an aviator. His cousin flew a two-wing Jenny fighter plane from World War I that landed in the field behind their house.
Oh my goodness.
My dad saw that plane and said, "I want to wear a silk scarf just like that guy." And from that time forward, and when World War II broke out and the war clouds began to gather, Dad said, "I'm going to be an Army Air Force cadet."
Okay.
And he did that. He managed to get through that straight out of high school with the help of one of his nuns who taught him in high school. And he managed to get through that and was able to go through and complete the training, which were not many. A lot of them washed out.
I'm sure they did. That
Didn't
took a
make it for
lot.
whatever reason.
Yeah.
They couldn't master the academic side or the flying side.
Well, and even just the mental, just being able to compartmentalize and totally focus on your mission and not think about this. This could be the last time I'm in the plane. This is the last
Absolutely.
breath I'm going to take. No, he put that aside
Exactly.
and was able to complete that, for the 25 times that he was required
He
to.
had to do his job.
Yeah.
And each man on the crew had to do it. And that's one of the things Dad said. So, and people would ask him, "How did you survive?" He said, "A lot of it's luck. But we each had jobs to do. All 10 of us had a job. And his job was to fly this plane. They flew at 25,000 feet, 35 degrees below zero, with
Oh my
open
gosh.
windows.
Oh my gosh.
Open windows.
How could they even feel their hands to
Well, they
move
couldn't.
the-
And if they had to take their gloves off to clear a 50 caliber machine gun, sometimes their hands would stick to the metal because
Oh
they're
my
so cold.
gosh.
That's what these young men did over and over again, and many of them did not make it back. The casualty rate among the Air Force bomber crews in World War II was about the same as the Marine Corps
Wow.
on Guadalcanal in the Pacific. Very high risk occupation for World War II guys.
So I have a question for you about the process that you and your dad went through, because my dad was also in the military, and he didn't want to talk about his experience, and a lot of his friends didn't want to talk about it either. And so you must have had a really special, especially as stoic as you describe your father as being,
Right.
you must have had a really special bond to be able to click that switch for him to feel okay about opening up and writing this information
Right.
on paper, because you're right, writing is very therapeutic.
Absolutely.
And it can clear a lot of things that have been cobwebs and hanging over you for a really long time.
That's right.
So what was the way that you were able to kind of nudge him into saying okay to this?
Well, as I mentioned, he had just gone through AAA surgery.
Right.
Abdominal aortic aneurysm surgery. And he was not recovering very well. He just had to go through this pulmonary thing, and he was a lifetime smoker. And I said, "Well, Dad," and he told me about this premonition that he had.
Yeah.
That was one of the things that really tricked it for him. I think
Okay.
He said before surgery, this was in 1987, he had this premonition he wasn't going to make it.
Oh,
And this
wow.
is serious surgery.
Yeah.
Had to put a Dacron tube in his stomach to replace the aorta they had to take out with the aneurysm. He said, this is the same feeling I had in 1944 when we were going to fly our 21st mission to Magdeburg, heavily defended industrial city about 50 miles from Berlin. He knew that it was going to be tough. And he said, I woke up that morning, went out to the plane with the crew, and he said, I just came over me. He said, I was not going to make it.
Wow.
Maybe the crew would make it, but he was not going to make it.
And he got in that plane anyways.
And he did. And he didn't tell anybody about it. Mm-hmm. And they had a hard time. They had one engine shot out, and they barely made it back to an emergency airfield right on the coast. So I said, Dad, that's a great story. And this is about your life. So we didn't start there. We went back and started when he was 9 years old.
Okay, all
He was
right.
going to fly in that plane from World War I.
And that's a little safer place to start
Exactly.
than
He
in
was
the middle
telling-
of battle.
Exactly.
There you go.
He talked
Okay.
about his life growing up on the farm, dairy wheat farm in central Michigan, about his grandparents. And then it segued into the war coming, and he saw this as a chance for him to actually become an aviator. So I said, Dad, that's just a great story. Let's write that story down because your story needs to be preserved. He got into a program at the University of Tennessee where they were interviewing World War II veterans for oral history. I said, Dad, this fits right into that. And anyone who's listening who has a relative who has fought in Vietnam or fought in Afghanistan, Iraq, if they can work with them to tell their story, it's a wonderful thing because so many people don't want to talk about it
Yeah.
because it's so traumatic.
Yes.
My dad's World War II combat experiences changed him forever. He never got over it. And I don't mean that in a negative way, but it influenced his whole life.
Sure.
I think toward the end of his life, I think he began to wonder, why did I make it? Because his crew member, his buddies were dying and his friends were dying. And so much of it was just the luck of the draw. You got in that airplane and did your job knowing the odds were against you, way against you, because there was so much going on, and not just the enemy, but the plane itself could fail. You could fail. The weather in East Anglia, England, was bad most of the time. They were flying with instruments. My dad tells a story in the book about the first time he started his B-24, fully loaded for combat with ammunition and bombs and fuel. He put those Wright Cyclone 2,000 horsepower engines on full throttle with the brakes locked. He released the brakes to taxi, and it didn't move.
Oh, no.
It's just sitting there roaring, vibrating, and begins to creep down the runway. And you can see a line of trees down at the end of the runway, about a mile and a half away. And this plane has to get to about 115 or 20 miles an hour to lift off.
Wow.
And he's going down the runway, and his co-pilot's going 50, 75, 80, 85. He finally felt the controls respond, and he lifted off. He said there wasn't a sound on board with the intercom. Everybody was pulling for him. Come on, Ray, you can do it.
Everybody's leaning back.
And then he did that over and over again. And just making the formation, getting in formation with the other planes was dangerous. They had mid-air collisions
Wow.
all the time. So many people that died in that war died not from necessary contact with the enemy in combat, but all the other things that could go wrong that would take your life. So it was quite a story, and he finally was able to tell the story.
And the name of the book is called...
The name of the book is The Dark Angel Turned Away.
The Dark Angel Turned Away.
This is a picture of Dad on D-Day
Wow.
when he was flying the B-24 before they transitioned to B-17s. And he looks like he's holding up a V like that. I think this means number 2. He flew 2 missions that day.
That day?
That day on D-Day.
On D-Day?
Yes, ma'am. He was there.
My goodness.
He said you could walk across the English Channel with the boats. There were so many.
So many.
He said it was just unbelievable to see it.
Well, I think it's a real treat and an honor that you got to spend this much time with your dad, to get to know him on a very different level than a lot of people. And even, from your youth, your experience with him growing up, working with him as an adult, I'm sure it gave you a much more interesting or deeper perspective on who he is as a person.
Well, I had that context, that parental context. One of the great things that happened after we did the book, I had an opportunity to make a presentation at Cambridge University in England. And that's only about 30 miles from where Dad was stationed in Sudbury.
Okay.
And I invited him to come with me. He said, no, I'm too old. I can't do that. I was sick. I said, Dad, this is your chance. I said, it's on me. I mean, I'm going over there. I've got the university is supporting me. So, well, okay. So we actually went back to where he was stationed, and we saw where his plane had been tethered to the ground.
Wow.
And I'll never forget the look on his face. I mean, my dad, I get verklempt just thinking about it.
Oh.
But I could see it just wash over him.
Yeah.
As I was standing there as his adult son.
Yeah.
With him there. And we write about that in the book. He does, and I do too. And it was just a great experience. So anyone who has a chance to share that with a loved one, with a relative, or even a good friend, somebody like that, it can be a very special experience.
And what a great legacy he's left for his family too.
Exactly.
You know, and I maybe at the beginning that's kind of where it was positioned. Is like, you know, let's just keep this. Have a few copies. You said how many copies?
30 copies.
30 were originally bound.
That's it. Yeah.
And that was the end of the project.
Exactly.
And
but he did go on to write. He did go on. It sort of got him into the writing thing.
Yeah.
He continued to do that, which I think was a real gift for him later on.
Oh, you mean after the book?
After
kept
the book
writing.
came out.
Oh, see, you opened that up for him.
Yeah, he wrote another book after this one.
Oh my gosh! Well, you guys are both writers.
Well, maybe I inherited that from him.
Maybe you did.
He's an inveterate storyteller. My wife Melody says that I'm a storyteller. I said, honey, stop me if I tell stories over and over again. She said, I've tried to stop you already. It doesn't work.
Well, this was a great outlet for storytelling as books,
Exactly.
and you've got another one already written and published.
Right. This was my book. This
Okay.
is called Standing Tall and Looking Good.
Okay.
One Soldier's Life and Lessons Learned from 1968 to 1971, which was when I was in the Army. During the Vietnam era, I did not go to Vietnam. I went to Korea. I had a very interesting experience in basic training at Fort Campbell, Kentucky in 1968. 150 men in the company. And this was wartime. They were drafting 40,000 men a month. And after a couple of days, the drill sergeant, who had not come across as a good friend of mine, called me into his office and said, Zuker, I'm going to put you in charge of the company. I said, Drill Sergeant, I don't have any experience with it. He said, don't worry, Zuker, I'll teach you. And I thought probably that meant he was going to drop me for push-ups every chance, every time I made a mistake.
Oh, this sounds like fun.
So that meant I had to march 3 platoons, 150 men all over Fort Campbell, Kentucky. I had to march them.
Wow.
I had to sing the marching songs that these drill sergeants sang to us, and I learned to do that. And I had a great experience. We were the honor company of our cycle. Then I went on to be at the U.S. Army Intelligence Training School in Fort Holabird, Maryland. Mm-hmm. Then I went on to a year and a half in the Republic of Korea. I had a very interesting experience. I hope that my service was useful to the efforts we were making, because there were over 9 million men and women involved in the military during that time period. So Dad had World War II, the Korean veterans had their war. My generation, we had the Vietnam War. And my dad's generation was the greatest generation. I called our generation the gruntest generation because we were grunts. Most of us were grunts, carrying our gear into the combat zone or wherever we were stationed. And we did it.
Yeah.
And we finished, we came back and went to school. I went to graduate school on the GI Bill. And so many of my colleagues, my friends who went through the military with me did the same thing. So there's nothing good about war. The only good thing about it is if you survive and you accomplish your mission and you help your colleagues survive, then you can take that experience with you and it will shape your life for the rest of the time you're on Earth.
Yeah, and a lot of our viewers and listeners are entrepreneurs, and I think that there's a lot of parallels between what you're talking about as far as, following your mission, following your plan,
Exactly.
into, building a business. When you develop systems, everybody understands their part in that system, and when everybody performs their part of the system, everyone stays safe.
It works, right?
Yes, everyone grows. Yes. So, I was kind of in the back of my mind, just like, wow, it really is an interesting experience that you guys go through as far as learning about working with other people, keeping yourself safe, but also putting yourself your personal safety in the back of your mind to take care of everyone else that's around you. That's what your dad did as a skipper.
Absolutely.
So, well, I know we've just got a few more minutes, and you've got a third book that's coming out very soon. So tell us about that one too.
This is the third of the Zuker trilogy, I'm calling it.
The Zuker trilogy, got it.
A little bit presumptuous to do that, and this is a personal book. This is about my experience with cancer. I'm a cancer survivor. I was diagnosed in 2014 with a squamous cell carcinoma of the base of my tongue, a somewhat rare form of cancer. But I thought, what an irony. Now I've got cancer of the tongue, and my whole career has been about speaking and talking.
Right.
And now anyway, I went through the process of treatment. I had chemotherapy, radiation, and chemotherapy a second time, and the curing of cancer is almost as bad as the cancer itself. Just the side effects of the treatment are so dramatic and devastating. But the thing about it is, if you have a support group, a group of people and my wife Melody was my angel. She saved me so many times.
Thank you, Melody.
Yeah,
Shout out.
Thank you, honey. I love you. You're my angel. She got to know me in ways I never wanted her to, but that's another story.
Well, that's what love does.
But that's what love is. And my hope is this book coming out is called Grace with Meals, because that's the working title, because I couldn't eat.
Yeah.
My salivary glands were hit hard. Lymph nodes were hit hard. My taste buds were. I love to eat. Melody's a wonderful cook. And when you can't eat and you can't enjoy it, it just changes your whole life. I mean, that's such an important factor in the quality of life. We don't appreciate it until it's gone.
And it's a very social thing, too.
Absolutely.
It's a way to bring people together. And
the families together.
Yes.
If you go to a restaurant and you watch people eating, they're not thinking about eating.
Oh, no.
They're thinking about finishing that Big Mac and getting back to the office. And in the book, I say we should develop meal mindfulness.
Ah, yes.
Think about what you're eating. Just for a moment, pause. This is the best dadgum Big Mac I've ever had.
And be grateful for it.
And be grateful that you could enjoy it and taste it. I think it would help your weight control by doing that.
Absolutely.
Because you wouldn't just wolf things down. You say, that is so good. I'm going to mix these two together, and that's a new flavor. And when you can't appreciate that flavor, and it's never been the same. I've gotten some of it back. The taste has come back. But it's never been the same as it was before. But I'm so thankful I've got what I've got now.
Yeah.
So the book is to help the caregivers and the patients to go through it. One of the things I say in the book is cancer creates cancer caregivers are everyday heroes, and they're heroes every day because you're taking care of that patient all the time, like an Alzheimer's caregiver. The same thing.
Right.
We don't give enough credit to those people who are making those people's lives the best they can be.
Well, Dr. Zuker, I really appreciate everything that your dad did for our country, what you've done for our country, and the gratefulness that you share for still being here and having the ideas to put into book form so other people can enjoy it as well. So let our listeners and our viewers know how they can find your books and learn more about you.
Well, the books are available on Amazon.
Okay.
Dad's book is available right now in paperback.
Okay.
My book is available on Kindle ebooks.
Okay.
And they can go to Amazon and just look up Zuker, Standing Tall, or Dark Angel. That will take them to the site.
Well, I, again, thank you so much for being here, Fred. This has been an amazing segment on Coffee with Claire. And thank you for our listeners and our viewers. Be sure to like us on Facebook and follow us on Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn, and subscribe to us on iTunes. We'll see you next time on Coffee with Claire. Bye-bye. Thanks for tuning in to this week's episode of Coffee with Claire. To learn more about today's guests, visit their website or find them on Facebook. To learn more about me, Claire Billingsley, follow me on LinkedIn or visit my website at coffeewithclaire.tv. And to hear more episodes of Coffee with Claire, subscribe, rate, and review the show on your favorite podcast and social media platforms.